Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing very well indeed. Today I continue my monthly series where I talk about the best films I watched in the preceding month. I'm glad to say I've kept up a good pace of watching films that I started in January, so February was also full of a lot of movies. But in this case, not quite so many that really captured my imagination as January had. But instead, February had a good few that still have my brain processing and considering what I think about them. Some curious and intriguing watches that I can't quite pin down, so an interesting month overall. And well, without any further ado, let's talk about the best films I watched in February. First up is Three Women, a film from 1977 and directed by the great Robert Altman. It stars Shelley Duvall, Sissy Spacek, Janice Rule and Robert Fortier. Once I'd watched this one, I sat there thinking to myself, wow, this is like Bergman's Persona meets David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. And I was delighted with my brilliant and sharp insight. At least that is until I read the booklet included where the discussion mentions both of these films almost immediately. And that quickly brought my film analysis ego back down to earth, having thought of perhaps the most two obvious equivalents. Despite that though, both of those are great examples of this type of film and gives you some idea of what you can expect from Three Women. It's like an insane fever dream, but one that is utterly captivating. The story sort of follows really only two women for the most part, played brilliantly by Shelley Duvall and Sissy Spacek. And we begin with Spacek being the new hire at the place where Duvall's character works, and her character really takes her under her wing and shows her the ropes. And following that, both of their lives become quickly entangled. Shelley Duvall's character in particular was so interesting, but maybe the most interesting part was in how other people reacted to her and treated her. This is a film which plays with identity. It twists and turns reality and has you intrigued and questioning throughout. It was dark and eerie, creepy, weird and strange. It was compelling and brilliant, with the excellent dreamlike quality which kind of murkies up the story. It had me saying, what on earth happened? What was real? Who was who? And I have not a single answer after watching it, only more questions, and I absolutely loved it. This is a film that reminds me how great cinema is as an art form. How it can interest, captivate, twist and turn and become something like a mind-bending and baffling experience, and yet retain a certain feeling that really moves you and captivates you. It was incredible, really. Though I've seen a fair few of his films now, it also reminded me that Altman is a director that I don't feel familiar enough with yet, and so I really look forward to diving more meaningfully into more films from him as I go forward. Next we have Harmonium, a film from 2016 directed by Koji Fukada and starring Tadanobu Asano, Mariko Tsusui, Kanji Furutachi, Taiga Nakano, Momone Shinokawa, Kana Mahiro and Takahiro Miura. This was one of the most quietly devastating films I think I've ever seen. It's one that makes little fuss, little outburst, but still cuts so deep. It's a story that starts out as one thing but keeps turning into something else. It never settles down into familiarity, and certainly doesn't shy away from making some twists and turns that are really pretty brutal. I won't go into the story too much as I don't want to spoil anything, so all I'll say is that this one is a family drama, and it's all about a family that is forever altered by the arrival of an old acquaintance of the husband's who he hadn't seen in many years. There's one scene in particular and a couple lines in the film which really stuck with me after I'd seen it, where the wife says at one point, "Should we get divorced?" The husband just replies with, and then all she says is, "I'm so tired." And this is a film where you really feel that tiredness, with a brilliant performance in particular I thought by the wife, played by Mariko Tsusui, as you feel her desire, her passion, but also her hesitations, and you feel the horrible, lingering, unmoving pain which has become this constant in the background of her life. But there are also superb performances here from Tadanobu Asano, who plays this mysterious quality with a quiet air of threat about him as well. and of course Kanji Furutachi, who so brilliantly plays the husband here. There is a mystery which hangs like a shadow over much of the film, over the characters, over their relationships, and like in real life where you simply don't have all the answers, the consequences and frustrations of not knowing can't help but infiltrate and almost be a poison to your life in certain circumstances. The film also ends on a similarly unexpected note and leaves you with questions about its powerful themes. This is one Eureka release that has been perennially around only £7 or even under that sometimes, and I've got no idea why, because it's absolutely fantastic and I wish I'd gotten to it sooner. It's sadly now going out of print like so many of Eureka's Masters of Cinema line, which is becoming a bit of a ghost town of a collection sadly, so it's definitely one that I'd recommend to snap up if you're able to. Then we have The Promised Land, a film from 2023, though just released here about a month ago, and one that I was lucky enough to catch at the cinema, as sadly it seems to have had a very short run on the big screen. It's directed by Nikolai Arcel and stars Mads Mikkelsen, Amanda Collin and Simon Benneberg, as well as the young and adorable Melina Hagberg and also Christine Kujath Thorpe, who is an actor I've really been enjoying over the last couple of months, and the reason why this film was brought to my attention as I was exploring her filmography. This one was deeply moving and pretty brutal, but brutal in a more visceral way than Harmonium was, in a much more physical way as you might expect from a tale set during the 18th century. It's a story that follows Mads Mikkelsen's character, who is a retired army captain who wants upward mobility, and intends to get it by tackling one of Denmark's biggest problems, and a problem that has the attention of even the king himself. There is a large swath of land in the middle of Denmark unable to be cultivated. It had been tried and failed on several occasions, but where the others have failed, Mikkelsen's Captain Ludwig Karlen intends to succeed, to grow food and then build a colony on the land. The difficulty of everything in this film is so incredibly pronounced. You feel the constant danger of death. Be that danger from the upper classes who don't want change, danger from the unknown strangers you might come across where every meeting has a shadow of threat hanging over it, danger from the weather or just from hunger and thirst. The pretty harrowing reality that we are so far removed from now in the Western world of just struggling to survive is front and centre here. I was reading recently about what's called the problem of food and how it has been so thoroughly solved in the Western world, but it's something that dominated people's lives for the majority of history, just having enough to eat to keep on living, and of course something that affects much of our world still today. There are some incredibly real-feeling, steady relational developments here that are magnificent to watch, and they are a real testament to the writing and acting in particular, as our core characters grow slowly closer. Mikkelsen, Collin and Hagberg make a brilliant trio that are so engaging to watch despite their bleak circumstances. This is a film that is as harsh and hard as the seemingly untenable soil on the stark moors. It's a film about fierce ambition, success and failure, and also one about family. There are moments of such horrifying injustice that will make your stomach twist, and also moments of vindication and elation that will have you clasping your hands in joy. Overall, just a fantastic film, brilliantly written, directed and acted, that I really look forward to picking up on Blu-ray. I was watching an interview with the director who said that the original cut of the film was over 3 hours long. And some characters had a far larger role, so I really hope that perhaps we might even get a chance to see an extended cut, as this is a story I'm really looking forward to revisiting and I would really enjoy spending more time in. And well, I'll leave it at just those 3 films this month. But before I get onto my honourable mentions, I thought I'd just talk a little bit more about some of the films that I referenced at the beginning, the ones that I'm still thinking about and processing, and not completely sure what to make of yet. The first is La Notte, which I thought overall was pretty excellent. I'm a huge fan of Jan Moreau, and she shines here alongside Fellini's favourite Marcello Mastroianni. Together and along with Monica Vitti, we have a tale that is emotionally dense and rich, with great performances all round. It has a melancholic core to it, contributed to not only by the performances but by the superb camera work on display here. But it's one that I already want to watch again, as I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. It's almost a meditation on marriage in some ways, I thought, but it's a film where I feel like with only one viewing, I've missed so much of what's there, and there is so much more to explore here. Then we have Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest. What I can say is that I think this is a film that shows, perhaps better than any other, how important sound design is to a film, because it's in the sound where all the truth and horrors are to be found. And actually, since scripting this video, I was glad to see that they won the Oscar for Best Sound, which seems of course so well deserved. Beyond that though, I'm not really sure what to say about it. I've heard many people mention the banality of evil, and I guess that does come across, but it's a curious film. Certainly a unique one given the subject matter, but one where I don't really know how to take it or what to think about it still. And actually, after watching Neil's movie channel just the other day, I was glad to see that he was talking along similar lines as well, so I'm glad I'm not the only one. And last but not least, we have Vengeance is Mine, which was my first film by Shohei Imamura. I have the Eureka release here with the very provocative cover art. This is a film where what I'd heard about it was a bit detrimental to my expectations, as I'd heard that it was a film about a Japanese serial killer. And while I guess that is technically true, it's not really a serial killer film like I was anticipating, something like Zodiac or something from Mindhunter, for example. This was something different. It's another curious film which seems less premeditated, but also had other elements at play which were totally out of left field for me, but added some really interesting and more human and relatable parts of the story coming from the other characters. This one explores a lot of themes like mental health, religion, desire, temptation, as well as questions about morality, and not just from the protagonist here, but from all the characters. A really interesting but strange watch, at times disturbing of course as you might expect, but one that has remained on my mind. And then finally onto some honourable mentions. The first one is Enemy Mine, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It reminded me a lot of the classic Robinson Crusoe on Mars, but just a bit updated. Then we have Bullet Train, which really surprised me. I was slightly worried I might hate it, but I actually had a blast with it. It was a lot of fun despite some shaky accents, including some great and amusing action. Next is Amores, Perros, which felt almost like a Mexican Magnolia. A great story of varied threads, and the astonishing directorial debut of Alejandro González Inarritu. And lastly, The Green Green Grass of Home from Halcyon Cien, which was just a joyous tale. Simple, low budget, but so sweet. Just a fun, laugh-out-loud story of kids at school with a new teacher. There's some romance, there's some environmentalism, there's just a lot of shared joy and fun. A story of family, community in local villages, and just, I would think, of the Taiwan countryside at a certain time. Thoroughly enjoyable. And well, that brings us to the end of the video and my February in film. I hope your year has been going very well so far, and not to worry if it hasn't had the best start, because there is plenty of time for things to get better. I hope you watched some wonderful films in February, and I hope your March has been going very well as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.